Welcome back to the Oracle Scroll. Today, we're discussing grief. Hi, I'm Kevin Walder, your host for the Oracle Scroll. And today we're continuing our journey through this little deck that I've been playing with, and we're talking about card number 33, Grief. So it's a little break from some of the more positive areas that we've been dealing with, because negatives are going to always appear in our lives, and we're always going to have to deal with them in some manner or fashion. Grief is something that every human being will eventually at some point experience, and experience in their own private and personal way. That's probably the biggest thing for us to take away from any discussion of grief. There are no rules. The rules go out the door with each of us, because we all have our own way of dealing with a loss, whatever that loss may be. We can experience grief over the loss of a home. We can experience grief over the loss of a career or a job, or the dream job perhaps. We can experience grief over the loss of a pet. And then seriously, we can experience grief when we lose family members or partners and people that are close to us. Anyone who has made an impression on our lives. So grief is something that is part of being human. There's really no way to avoid it. So how can we deal with it, and how can we look at it as something that is necessary and still positive in our lives? Grief actually is a way of acknowledging the depth of our love and our appreciation for that item, that situation, that person, whatever it is we're grieving, whatever was there, we have had to let it go. And most generally, these situations, it was not of our choosing. We did not actually make the plan for letting it go. And that can intensify the grief that we feel. But grief is something, it is soul cleansing. It is something we need to go through in order to begin to soften the edge of the pain that we feel at experiencing a loss. Suddenly we begin to look at the blessings, especially when losing, let's say, a long-term partner in life. I have done some work with hospice areas here in Snohomish County, and that was one of the things, is when you're losing someone very, very close to you after many decades together, you're grieving everything. You're not only grieving the loss of that person and the company, but you're grieving the things that you used to interact with, the chores that you used to share, or just the encouragement that you used to get or give. Those things all have gone away at that moment. So yes, it's a very sharp pain, and one that is difficult to endure, impossible to ignore. And grief is our built-in way of dealing with that loss and softening that sharp pain of loss, so that we can begin to see the blessing that we have had by having that person in our lives, or that situation in our lives, for as long as we did. We begin to see and enjoy the memories of the good things that we experienced together, rather than the horror of the loss. And grief it comes and ebbs and flows. You will think that you are beyond your grief and you have finally finished with that aspect of dealing with the situation. And suddenly something will remind you, or something will tip you in the direction of starting it over again. And that's okay. That's what I said at the beginning. There are no rules. I mean, a general rule is that it takes a year of grieving in order to really be ready to go back to living again, as you might do normally. But that is just an arbitrary figure. Some folks are going to be in a position that they have concluded that aspect a little sooner than a year, and others may take much, much longer. So grieving is a necessary part of living. How could we help others who are in that stage of grieving? Well, the last thing you want to do is begin to try to solve the problem. It is a problem that does not have a solution, and you and I are certainly incapable of solving a problem like this. So begin to notice that you cannot do that. That is beyond your power. So then what can you do? Well, honestly, sometimes the absolute best thing you can do is just sit quietly and listen. And yes, there will be times when you get tired of hearing the same old stories again and again. But that's the best thing you can do, is just listen. And feel that connection, because that is where the grief, that's where the well up comes from. So, as we look at card number 33, 33 is a 6 again. And I just talked about 6s in another recent episode. They're recuperative, regenerative. They are recovery. So sometimes grief is, well, all the time, grief is the first step to recovery. It is the beginning of adjustment to a new way of life that you may not have ever wished for. Grief. We're all going to face it, and we're all going to need help. So let's be there for each other. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Oracle Scroll. Please stop by my website at kevinwalder.com, where you can purchase any of the services that I offer. Also, check out my books, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards, and more recently, 22 Teachers, Healing Lessons from the Major Arcana. Both are available at amazon.com. And both are very easily understood and easily followed directions for using the tarot. And most importantly, please subscribe to this channel by clicking the little red button down below, and go ahead and click that bell next to it so that you never miss an episode.